Hola, hola! Welcome to the Breakthrough Brand Show. I'm Fabi Paolini, and my mission on this podcast is to give you the behind-the-scenes stories, anecdotes, and unique perspectives behind building a premium brand that makes a real impact. I believe that when you create a message that is aligned with your truth, you can have the breakthroughs that changes lives. Each week, me and my guests share with you how we're making an impact with our message and the stories behind our success. So that being said, let's dive into today's episode. Well, I am so excited today to welcome Ron Reich, who is a really amazing marketing strategist and consultant. I was at his mastermind event last year, and he is the real deal. He's worked with some of the biggest names that you've heard: Todd Herman, Selena Sue, Denise Duffield Thomas, Ryan Levesque, a lot of these amazing people, helping them build multiple seven-figure businesses. So I'm really excited to have him here because this is going to be really good. Welcome, Ron.
Thank you so much for having me. Great to be here. Always great to connect with you.
Yeah. So in your words, what do you do?
Yeah. So my tagline, and I know you're good at teaching people how to do this, is I would say that I help mission-driven entrepreneurs scale from 6 to 7 figures while becoming their best selves. That's really what I'm all about doing. And really the message to my madness is really a combination of optimizing of course, there's that mindset part, then there's the marketing strategy part that you mentioned, and then there's the actual getting them to actually execute and actually make sure that they get done the things that they need to get done. So it's kind of about having all those three things being aligned and lined up. And that's what really allows anyone who's really doing lower 6 figures to really grow exponentially to 7 figures and beyond.
I love that. Well, what I actually don't know is how you got to doing what you do. I'm really curious. Can you tell me a little bit of the backstory?
All right. Yeah, I'll give you, let's see, I'll give you the 3-minute version of this.
Okay.
There's a 10-minute version, the 3-minute version. So I like to say that I actually had my first motivational talk when I was actually in the 2nd grade. I came home from school one day, and my mother told me that I was going to get held back from the 2nd grade, that I was going to have to repeat the 2nd grade. And this is actually really, really traumatic for me.
Yeah.
And really for almost my entire life, I felt like there was something wrong with me. Like I wasn't good enough. I wasn't smart enough. And that really caused me to kind of overcompensate in a lot of ways. And so it's like the way you're told that you're smart is and what I thought at the time was I was going to become by going to law school, becoming a lawyer, getting straight A's. So I ended up actually being a pretty good student. I ended up actually going to law school. And then, long story short, I will not give you the 10-minute version. I'll give you the 3-minute version.
Okay.
Being a lawyer turned out not to be the right job for me. It just was not the right career for me. And it was kind of around that time. That's actually when I discovered internet marketing. This was actually back in 2006. So it was actually called information marketing at the time, like packaging up your information and selling it, not just online. We would actually advertise in magazines and things like that.
Right.
But that eventually evolved into internet marketing. And so long story short, I ended up actually thinking, okay, that was cool. I don't want to be a lawyer. Let me do that. And so I ended up actually started my first project in that business way back in 2006. And my first actual business was actually a business that showed law students how to do good on the bar exam, how to pass the bar exam, write about what you know.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say.
Right. And then what ended up happening was I had a few other projects. I got into a variety of niches after that. I launched a business in the dog training space. Then and then before that, I actually had a business in the dating and relationship space. But I was always behind the scenes selling my own products, because I think there was still that kind of unwillingness to be in front of the camera because I kind of felt like I wasn't worthy or whatnot. But eventually I realized if I really wanted to make a bigger impact, that I really did have to share what I learned with the world, which is why back in 2017, that's when I actually started coaching entrepreneurs on how to grow an information business, how to grow coaching programs. And that is how I'm doing what I am now. So that's the 3-minute version. I think that was about
good. Amazing. So how did you get connected with all of these really amazing big brands that you've worked with? Like, I'm curious now. This is like my little personal,
This is the real question,
curiosity.
right? So I'll actually tell you that story. So that's actually one part of the story that I didn't mention. So thanks for bringing that up. So when I was in my marketer dude behind the scenes project,
Era.
one of the people I ended up working with was actually Ryan Levesque,
Mm-hmm.
who is, if you're not familiar with Ryan, I know you're familiar with Ryan. For those who are listening to this, for you listening to this, if you're not familiar with Ryan Levesque, he wrote a book called Ask. He's known for helping people use surveys and quizzes to essentially grow their businesses. He's written 2 best-selling books. He's a relatively big name in the broader internet marketing space. And he was actually coaching me at the time. I hired him as my coach back in 2012. And then he coached me for about 2 to 3 years in my various businesses at the time. And then he started to really blow up. His book actually came out in early 2015. And this is when he really kind of got on the map and became a known figure. And he needed somebody to help him actually coach his mastermind that he had at the time. And I started doing that. And then eventually he needed some help with his marketing. He had a launch that wasn't going so well. So he asked me if I could come in and help him out. And before I knew it, I was actually his full-time marketing director. So I ended up doing that for about 2 years. And it was one of those things where at the time, fully transparently between us and those listening to this,
Exactly.
I ended up working with him as the marketing director because I kind of needed the money. I had a couple projects right now that were going on at that time, I should say, that were not doing so well. And so I ended up kind of having to, quote unquote, in some ways kind of get a job. So it was really kind of one of those come to Jesus type moments where you kind of don't feel so good about yourself. But like everything, it turns out that those difficult things, those that turned out to be great things that some of the best things that could happen to you. And so really as a result of that and kind of being in Ryan's world, that's what got me actually kind of got into the world of helping entrepreneurs grow their businesses. And 2 specific things that really helped me out is I actually was able to go to all of his mastermind events, basically for like I think it would have been 2000, what years would it? That would have been 2015, 2016. And for like 3 years, I went to all of his high-level mastermind events. And these are like player type events. And I was actually well positioned as like his number 1 student, his marketing director, as like little marketing genius dude. So everybody thought that I was like the smart. Little did they know, right? No, I'm kidding. And the other thing that I also did, I also was his essentially, as part of the marketing director job, I was his affiliate manager. Okay. More or less. So I was that's why I connected with all of these bigger affiliates and things like that. So it is kind of like one of those things where it's just like kind of being in the right rooms and working those and I'm really awesome. So people like me. So and working those types of connections. And then kind of like, then it's kind of one thing led to another. Once I stopped my engagement with Ryan, then I ended up, what do you do? It's like, hey, I need to make money. So then it's like, then it's like, how do you make money? Well, you got to call people up. You got to ask for referrals. You got to work your network. And so then it was like I started doing that right after I stopped working with, this was early 2017. And like I called Selena Sue. She ended up becoming one of my clients. Then like Denise Thomas, that kind of snowballed. Then I became kind of known as the guy who was good at like launches and things like that. And then Todd Herman brought me on. And then before I know it, I'm like the guy who's coached all these big players.
Right. I find it so interesting and like the power of building relationships with people. And at your mastermind event in Miami, that's one of the things that you guys talked about so much.
For sure.
And it really is. I mean, how could you ever known what that relationship with Ryan could lead to eventually, right?
Yeah, it's one of those things where you kind of, it's funny now. It's like you kind of don't know what you got till it's gone. No, not that I don't mean that 100%, right? But like when I was in when I was when I was working with Ryan and when I went to those mastermind events, there was like that was actually the first time I actually did a presentation in front of entrepreneurs was like in front of that group. And that was like pretty cool. I was like really nervous at the time, but it was really well received. And then I did a couple other presentations in front of that group. And this was like, Ryan really attracts a good crowd. This was like a players
right.
audience. Like this was like, each event had like 30 to 40, the majority of people were doing like multiple seven figures, like really a lot of big names in this space, big names that, that you and those listening to this, would know. And so it's one of those things where it's like, I mean, these days I would not kill, but like these days, like I would like do anything to be able to like,
right.
just not just be in those rooms, but to be in like an authority position, like in those rooms. And again, like I was, and it turned out to be good because it was a good energy, but like, and it's one of those things where it's like knowing what I know now, because I was not really intentional about, getting clients or building my business because I didn't have a business to build at the time. That's one of those things where it's like, man, knowing what I know now, I wish I could just download my current brain into the 2015 version of myself, and like, I could have even leveraged that situation even more. So
right. I love it.
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So okay, so tell me about your 3 stages to building a 7-figure business, because I heard you talk about this and I think that it's so interesting. I feel like my audience would really love to
cool.
go into it.
Yeah, for sure. So the 3 stages. So I've worked with a lot of, this is really my sweet spot. It's really helping people who people who who've already got some momentum. We're doing typically at least 100,000, but typically a little bit more. Maybe they're doing like between 100 to $300,000 a year or more. Obviously, that's easier because they have more to work with. But helping them go, to from 6 to 7 figures. And what I found from building my own businesses, from working with, by now, I don't know, hundreds of clients, helping them scale their businesses, and then also just working with some bigger companies like Ryan and Todd Herman and people like that. What I've really found that there's really it's a pretty simple path. It's a pretty straightforward recipe. And most people get it wrong because they don't stay focused. They just don't follow the recipe. They're looking for like the magical secrets that's going to get them to 7 figures by clicking a button. But there's really essentially 3 stages, I should say. The first stage is what I call the jumpstart stage. The second stage is what I call the acceleration stage. Then the third stage is what I call the overdrive stage. So I'll just explain each of them, and then we'll see where it lands. So the first stage, the jumpstart stage, this is really when we go from, let's say, 100,000 a year to typically about 500, anywhere from $400,000 to $500,000 a year. It's kind of, we're going from like 10,000 a month to anywhere from like 30, 40, maybe 50K a month. Okay. Yeah, kind of in that range. And this really, it's essentially all about leveraging your existing assets and becoming your best salesperson, becoming a master of selling your best offer. That's really what it's all about. It's in the sense that if you've already done $150,000 a year, let's say, you, by definition, this is a 100% fact, you already have everything you need in place to be doing, 30, 40, 50K a month. You don't need a bigger audience. You don't need more followers on Instagram. You don't need to like have an automated webinar magical funnel that's going to print money or anything like that. You really just need to essentially, this is really boring. One of my mentors says, making money is boring. Making a lot of money is really boring. What you really need to do is you need to focus and do more of what's working and really improve the marketing of your existing offer. Now, I'm not saying don't build your audience. Growing your audience is awesome.
Obviously,
you want to continue growing your audience because it's just an idea. If you keep grinding at your same warm market, let's say. But at the same time, a lot of people think that, and I know we work with a relatively similar client.
Right.
A lot of people think that, oh, I'm doing $10,000 a month. I'm doing $15,000 a month. So in order for me to get to $15,000 a month, or in order to get to $50,000, the only way I'll get there is by tripling the size of my audience, by quadrupling the size of my audience, which for many reasons, that's just not, that is just not,
how it works.
That's just not a good strategy. So essentially, that's kind of what that process is. It's really about leveraging your existing assets and becoming your own best salesperson. What I like to, an exercise I like to give my clients, which I'll share here, is that imagine there was, I think you'll appreciate this, but imagine there was somebody who was a clone of you, and they sold like whatever your high-end offer is. Your let's say it's a $10,000 offer. And that person was a clone of you, and that person was a commission salesperson. The only thing that person's that person's only responsibility was selling as many of those $10,000 offers as possible. They don't have to like do any admin stuff. They don't have to like create systems. All they got to do is just sell that $10,000 offer. So if you were that person, what would you do?
Oh, what would you do? Such a good question to ask.
Pretty good, right?
I love
so it's
it.
like, yeah, then it's like punchline. It actually is you.
That's
if
what
you're
you
doing
need
less
to
than
do.
$50,000 about. So that's your action items. There you go. So that's that's essentially a very quick version. Obviously, there's more nuances to it, but that's just a quick version of what that stage is. Then the overdrive. Then the jump starts.
That is a jump start.
I'm going so fast. People tell me I need to slow down. I get so excited.
Me too. Me too. That's because you're married to a Latin person. I'm Latin.
There we go. Yeah, that's right. Totally. The fire. It's real.
Exactly.
Then the next stage is the acceleration stage.
Right.
So the acceleration stage, really what this means is we already have something that's working. So if we're doing, let's say $30,000 to $50,000 a month, we have things in place. We have an offer that works. We have an audience that likes us. We know who our target market is. So we essentially accelerate that. We're just putting more, more
fire
gasoline.
Fuel. Right.
Yeah, fuel to the fire. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's it. Fuel to the fire, not fire to the fuel.
Yeah. More fuel to the fire. And there was a few different ways to do this. You're not going to do all of them at the same time, but it's about finding which of them make the most sense to you. But for example, you can accelerate with paid advertising. You can accelerate by doing more partnership type things, like doing a big affiliate launch or really, really doubling down on partners. You can accelerate by doing more live events, for example, or doing a big live event, which is which can be a great business building aspect. You can accelerate even by just going all in on like speaking and spending a year on the road and speaking 2 to 3 times a month live and in person. Those are just a few examples. There's a few more, but the point I'm getting at here is that those are ways that that's kind of how you do kind of bring in those new audience members and really, really expand things. And the key here, this is one thing I like to talk about, which is it's essentially the acceleration principle, which is that in order to get from in order to get to that next stage, really to really go from lower 6 figures to upper 6 figures than $1 million, it's a kind of irrational thing. You do need an irrational level of ambition in order to do this. So that's why when we're talking about accelerating, by definition, you are going to be having to do things that are just maybe very, very much outside your existing comfort zone. You're literally going to have to stretch yourself. Like, for example, all the things I mentioned are all things that do that. One of the things I didn't mention, sometimes hiring a team can kind of fall into that category. That's kind of more in the third stage. It's more about the other ones that I mentioned. But like doing a big affiliate launch where you have like 30 partners like promoting at the same time, that's going to really, most people just don't have the courage to do that. There's a lot of vulnerability. Even just like once you get there, you can be very vulnerable when people are launching. Like, what if it doesn't work? Maybe people are going to laugh at you. At the same time, just getting lining up 30 affiliate partners. In order to do that, you're going to have to probably talk to more than 30 people. You're probably going to get rejected and things like that. Same thing with advertising. Most people, and I understand, I understand this. What it really takes to really make paid advertising work, especially in this day and age, as you know, it's just harder and harder with the way ads are working, things like that. It's a serious investment. It's just like, you're going to have to be spending time. You're going to have to be spending money. I know many people who've been really, really successful who they ended up essentially, they had something that's working and they really want to discuss. They would like float credit cards and really do things to fund their growth, these are things that
are irrational.
Many people would find to be not just irrational, but irresponsible. Like a lot, like entrepreneur types might not, but these are kind of like irresponsible type things. So this is kind of what I'm getting at. So that is a really a big part of it. Is that you really have to be willing to really stretch yourself. And the thing is that the truth of the matter is that, okay, what are the three reasons why people don't hit seven figures? There's, I would say, three reasons. One of them is they just don't stay focused. Really, what I talked about in the first place. They just don't focus on the things that work. They chase shiny objects, all that stuff. They're not good with their time. Really basic kindergarten stuff that if people just did it, they would be a lot better off.
Exactly.
The second reason is because on some level they just don't want it, because they're not really willing to stretch themselves. They're not really willing to do what it takes to get there. That's there's so many people like that. I get fired up about this. I know so many people where it's they might come to me on a consult or whatnot, and they're stuck at $250,000 a year, and they're like, I want to get to six figure, I want to get to seven figures. How do I get there? And I was like, well, okay, well, how long have you been doing $250,000 a year for? I've been stuck here for 3 years. Then I'll talk to them, I'll look at their business. I'll say, okay, so based on where you're at, here's what you need to do to get to seven figures. This, and this. And I'll give them the exact roadmap. And some people, they're just well, can I do it? Excuses. Can I do it? I don't want to do that.
They don't focus back to your first.
Exactly. Well, can I do that this way? I don't want to do that's not aligned with me. That's not going to work for me. I just want I don't want to do. I'm getting super fired up about this. I don't want to do sales calls. I can't do sales calls. I'm sick of selling. I'm sick of marketing. I just want passive income.
And I don't do anything.
Yeah, exactly. I just want passive income so I don't have to work so hard. It's dude, the work is just beginning if you're doing $250,000 a year.
Exactly.
So anyway, and this is the thing. It's so what you're telling me, and I would not tell them this unless I would not tell this to this.
In a nice way.
Unless it was a friend, it would be well, you're just telling me you don't really want to make seven figures. You're very, if you really wanted to you had the recipe. Exactly. And the third reason, which actually comes more in the earlier into the later stages that we're going to talk about in a second, is they just don't ask for help soon enough. That's another reason why people stay stuck. And asking for help, obviously that includes sometimes hiring amazing coaches like ourselves to help them grow their businesses. Exactly. But then it just includes hiring team and people to support them and help them, so they're not doing everything by themselves.
So then they can focus on the thing that we talked about in the first stage. Right?
which is our sales and marketing related activities. Exactly. And that's the thing there. The thing is, and this is a little bit of a pet peeve of mine. So there's a really brilliant dude, Taylor Welsh, he used to work for his company, Traffic and Funnels. One of the things I learned, I know he's a mutual acquaintance of ours, is he said one time, which I thought was quite brilliant, that you want to have one full-time employee for every $400,000 in revenue of your business. And that can be split up between two people that are working 20 hours a week or whatnot. So the idea there is that if you're doing $400,000 a year, you should have one full-time employee, which might be an assistant and maybe some a web person to help you out with some things. If you're doing $800,000 a year, that's like 2 full-time employees,
right.
which might include maybe a project manager, your assistant, maybe somebody else that's writing some copy for you and stuff like that.
Success or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. But there's like all these people that they want to they're doing like, $400,000 a year. They have teams like 8 people and they're like, dude, like stop this. No, you're not there yet.
Low. Exactly.
Exactly. And then they're complaining about their cash flow and things like that. So the third stage is that's the I'm going to get it right this time. That is the overdrive stage. That's where we actually truly scale from really scale from like 7 to multiple 7 figures and beyond. And that really is about the whole team and systems and really building a proper business. That's when you're going to probably bring in a sales team and maybe a sales manager and things like that. And you might even bring in a full-time copywriter. And that's when you're kind of doing all the stuff we were just making fun of. The time to do that is when you're doing at least $150,000 to $150,000 a month. Exactly. And to be honest, I know enough to be dangerous about that topic of going from 7 to 8 figures, but that's not my area of expertise. So I'll once you get to that stage, I'll pass you on to some of my friends more equipped to help you out at that. Yeah,
that's amazing. I think that I love these 3 stages because it really gives you as a listener kind of clarity around where you're at and what you need to be focusing on. And I feel like at the end of the day, in the 3 of them, and you said it at the beginning, it really is simple and it comes down to the simple things. And the reason why we don't do it is because we get distracted by, oh, TikTok is a thing now, or this. Totally. And it's not that, obviously you're not saying that you shouldn't do these things, but the basics need to be there too. Like you need to do the foundational work that feels like, but no, that is the work.
Yeah. And let me, I'll give you an illustration of this. So this is the thing for those of you who need help staying focused. I'm going to give you a visual illustration of why why you should not be distracted.
I love that.
So here's the thing. This is what happens to many people thinking about TikTok and artificial intelligence and things like that. Okay, so here's what happens. So typically, if you're doing anything, you might, even if you're not doing $100,000, you probably have something that's working. But let's say that you did $200,000 last year. So you're doing $15,000 a month. Here's the thing. You have thing that works. So if you keep doing thing that works, you're eventually going to get results. You're eventually going to grow that thing.
Right.
Using the things that you teach, that I teach, really simple things by improving your marketing, becoming better at sales, becoming more efficient, all these things. It's really basic, like the basic thing. Right. You're going to keep plugging along and if you just keep plugging along, you're going to get to 15, 20, 30, 40, $50,000 a month. And here's the thing. Whenever you add a new thing, a new variable like TikTok or artificial intelligence, or try to build a magical evergreen funnel because you don't want to do sales calls anymore or whatnot, or whatever it is, when you want to hire us, whatever it is, whatever your distraction is. The thing that most people don't realize is that when you have a thing that's working, when you add new thing in, people do not realize that once you add new thing in, this thing is probably going to stop, or it's not going to keep moving. So you think that I add new thing and this is just going to keep humming along. But what happens is that this new thing gets added. So the thing that's working stops. And then we add another thing in, and then we just get even more behind. This is why people literally stay stuck for years and they can never get out of it. When all they need to do is stop doing that and just do thing that works. And then again, once you're making $50,000, $60,000 a month and you have good cash flow, then you maybe have some buffer room to experiment with with TikTok and whatnot. So
because your energy is going to be limited. So I'll give you a little example of this. My business is in English, but I have my business theoretically translated into Spanish. So it is translated. I have my website translated into Spanish and I have my programs in Spanish, but I don't market in Spanish because what I realize is that it just is it's two businesses. Even if I'm doing the same thing, it's two businesses, two marketing strategies, two of everything. And anytime that I've added things in Spanish, or actively taken action to do more things in Spanish, they work. But then my English business, like, it's not that it slows down necessarily, but my attention is divided. And I know that this is a silly example, but my theory is, when I'm at a point where I'm consistently making 7 figures in my business, well, then I can hire out a whole team to help me execute the Spanish stuff, and that will be that. So that's
for sure. That's the way to do it. It's funny you mentioned that. One of my best friends, probably my best friend actually, my friend Tony, he has a business. It's in the relationship market, and his wife is another like my wife is Colombian. I know you're Venezuelan, another Latina, and so he actually did what you're talking. He wanted to duplicate his business in Spanish because of like the opportunity, and he ended up like he did it, but it was the same thing. It was like it didn't like the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. All it did was distract him, and then he stopped doing that because
it's too much. Anytime I have clients come to me all the time who are bilingual that are like, I want to launch my business in 2 languages, and I'm like, I will happily translate your website into Spanish, but I don't recommend you do marketing in 2 languages because you're gonna go crazy. It's 2 businesses, like
no, for sure, 100%.
Okay, so last question that I want to ask you, and it's gonna kind of change a little bit of the tone, but I know that you're really big and we didn't kind of get into it that much today, maybe next time, but I know that you're very much into mindset work. And I'm kind of curious around what role personal development has played in your entrepreneurial journey, and how do you prioritize that in your own life and your own business?
Oh, okay. I'm curious. Why are you asking this? I'm just curious. What?
So the reason why I ask it is that for me, mindset is massive. So this is something that I ask on every episode, because for me personally, personal development and mindset work has really meant the difference between success and stagnation. Let's call it like that. So I'm always kind of curious to hear other people's perspective on it and how they incorporate it into their own businesses too.
Okay, cool. Great. Yeah, great question. So I am really into mindset. I'm a total personal development junkie. So I'm into all the things for sure. And one of the things that I teach, one of the pillars of building a 7-figure business is really having that 7-figure mindset. So what I would say is that mindset is really, really critical, because it is actually true that it is essentially the highest leverage thing you can do is actually improve your mindset and expand your mindset, assuming, of course, that said mindset upgrades are followed by actual tangible actions and different things happening in the world, in the real world. But it is actually true that really everything that we talked about today is actually a really great example. So the person who's doing the things that I talked about today, that we talked about today,
each of the stages,
that goes through the stages, does the work, and hits 7 figures. In a lot of cases, not all, but in a lot of cases, that person is not necessarily working harder. That person's not necessarily working harder than the person who's doing 6 figures or who's doing $200,000 a month. The 7-figure person is definitely not working 5 times harder than the person doing $200,000 a year. So of course, the difference, is how they're doing what they're doing, for sure. But a big part of that is the mindset, because their mindset allows them to take those actions. It allows them to step outside their comfort zone. It allows them to see themselves as a 7-figure player. All these things are true. Things about the self-image. Like if you only see yourself as a 6-figure player, you're only going to be a 6-figure player. All those things about like financial self-image and like your money thermostat. If you're only comfortable making $25,000 a month, and as soon as you make $50,000 a month, you find a way to make $35,000. I mean, this is a mindset exercise.
Yeah,
And
100%.
there are ways to resolve it for sure. And if, again, I have processes for this, I know you help your clients with this as well. You can, there are other mindset experts that can help you that. It is true that some people that all they need is just a way to unlock them. It's like, hey, you've been making $35,000 a month. Let's fix a couple things when it comes to your financial side of it, and all of a sudden they're off to the races and they're hitting $100,000 a month. And there's not very many type things that are there's not really a faster way to do that.
Right.
Now the caveat here is that person who's making $35,000 a month who's stuck there, that person has assets. Like that person should have been making $100,000 a month.
Exactly.
Based on just their experience, how, what assets they have in their business and things like that. I'm not saying that if you're a beginner, if you're broke and you've never sold anything in your life, that there's some magical mindset work that's going to make you a millionaire overnight. That's not true.
That's not how it works. Exactly. I love that. Well, thank you so much, Ron. Where can people find you, reach out to you, hear more about you?
So the best place to find me and reach out to me is actually just find me on Facebook. I do a lot of things on my personal Facebook page for Facebook profiles. Hopefully you can put a link in the show notes or whatnot. And if you are listening to this, and if you're listening to this, if you send me a DM, I actually will send you a very special 2-hour workshop on how to hit consistent 100K months. It's really awesome. It goes through like my $1 million marketing machine. And so if you just find me on Facebook, send me that message, I'll get you a free access to that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ron. This was so amazing, so powerful, like always. And I look forward to seeing you soon again here in
That's right. We'll see you soon. Good stuff. Thanks for having me.
Gracias for listening to today's episode of the Breakthrough Brand Show. To listen to more episodes or to be featured as a guest, go to fabipaolini.com/podcast for more details. Can I ask you for something? If you got value out of this episode, would you share it on social media? Just do a quick screenshot with your phone and text it to a friend or just post it online. If you know somebody that would be a great guest, tag them on social media to let me know about the show and include the hashtag Breakthrough Brand Show. I love seeing your posts and guest suggestions. We're regularly putting out new episodes and content. To make sure that you don't miss any episode, go ahead and subscribe right now. Your thumbs up, rating, amor, love, and reviews go a long way to help promote the show and mean so much to me and my team. Want to know more? Go to our website, fabipaolini.com, or follow me everywhere as Fabi Paolini. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next time. Con amor, Fabi.